Well, I'll have to admit, Rhino, I miss the old CB days. Now we have these phones. It's not any fun. And joining us now, Hal Miller, president of the Mississippi Trucking Association. Hal, always good to see you, and thanks for coming in today.
Thank you.
Human trafficking, still a major problem in the state of Mississippi, in the country, and the trucking industry has really gotten involved in this in a positive way to try to eliminate this just really heinous activity.
Right, and it's something that we're very proud of being a part of. About 10 years ago, we got engaged with an organization called Truckers Against Trafficking, and they had only been established a couple of years, and they have a neat story in that it was a mother who educated her adult daughters, on what human trafficking was, and as a family, they decided they needed to get engaged. And once they studied, they realized that our industry was a great place to start. And so they established Truckers Against Trafficking back, I think, in 2009, and we plugged in around 2012 or so. And they have trained over 1 million people on what human trafficking is, how to spot it, once you spot it, what to do about it. And each component is so important. Once you teach somebody what human trafficking really is, it really is a paradigm shift in what you see in a lot of things like the sex trade, thinking, well, there are no victims there. You find out very quickly, almost always, there's a victim there. And once you understand that, you find a passion to get engaged with it. And then once you get engaged with it, it's critical that you know how to spot it and then what to do when you spot it. A lot of times folks want to be a hero and jump right in and save that person. Well, that puts everybody in danger. Yeah. So they're trained on what to do once they see it. And it's really neat. After they trained 1 million people in our industry, they started reaching out, and they're now training people in the bus industry, and schools. They're training law enforcement, the energy sector, truck stops. They've expanded, for lack of a better description, their ministry. But it's just really amazing. We've trained over 10,000 people in the state of Mississippi in the transportation industry so far.
Well, and so the thing about it is, as you and I have discussed this before, and we've discussed it with Secretary of State Michael Watts and, of course, Attorney General Lynn Fitch, is that it's you're likely around it, and you just don't know it. And so what this training does is help you recognize the red flags, if you will, that say, yeah, this is suspicious.
Yep, you're right. And the neat thing about it is they reached out to the trucking industry, and the truck drivers in particular are just the salt of the earth, good people that want to do good and want to do right and want to help people. And if you don't believe me, you go back to 9/11. Shortly after that, the federal government came to the trucking industry and said, train your drivers on how to spot the terrorist activity, because they knew the drivers would be everywhere all the time and really are very patriotic. When you think about natural disasters, once you see the first responders get in there, who's the very next person to fall in? The truck drivers jump up, and they're there risking their own well-being to help people. COVID, you think back during COVID, when everybody else was cowering at home, worried about what was going to happen next, the truck drivers were out there. They just feel like they want to do something, so they've picked the perfect group of folks to be a part of the solution, which, speaking of part of solution, you mentioned so many people in the state that are involved. You've got Department of Public Safety and MBI have established a task force of which we're a part of. The Attorney General and the Department of Public Safety created their Be the Solution program, of which we're a part of. The Secretary of State just came out with his MBAT program, Mississippi Business Against Trafficking. We're a part of that now. Well, you just find that place where you can fit in and do something. I've heard a speaker just earlier this week say, you figure out, first of all, what's your passion, what's driving you. Then you find your circle of influence. Then you engage wherever you can. Sure. And that's what we've tried to do, is just wherever we can engage to help fight this. Our industry does that.
So the MBAT Summit was just held this week, earlier this week, right?
That's correct.
So tell us how'd that go?
It went great. There were, I'm guessing, between 150 to 200 people attending it. Had the University of Southern Mississippi, through their social services, social work program down there, they've now got a human trafficking course, if you not course, but a whole line of courses to prepare people for fighting human trafficking, and they were educating the group on that, and they had a group of us come and share from the private sector kind of what's going on in the private sector, and then they unveiled a film that night that showed, again, the truth of human trafficking.
Have the truckers been receptive to this and really kind of gotten involved personally as they're making their routes?
Yes.
And are they in their reporting? They're following the guidelines?
They are, and Truckers Against Trafficking tries to keep up with as many as they can of actual situations where their engagement, the truckers' engagement, has saved people. And you can go to their website, truckersagainsttrafficking.org, and read about some of those. And it is absolutely, first of all, it's horrifying when you learn more about it. And I dare everyone to go and just spend 15 minutes on that website learning about it, and then all of a sudden you want to get engaged. But yes, the truckers have saved many, many people from human trafficking, and it's just.
Well, it feels like the average person sees human trafficking as something associated with our border with Mexico. I mean, that's probably where you get the most reports of human trafficking, and no doubt that's going on. And I guess that's kind of more the common understanding of it and perception of it. But that's not really what it is when you drill into it, and it's happening right here. And there are people that are residents of the state of Mississippi that are perpetrating these crimes.
And it's beyond my imagination in some cases. You actually have families trafficking their children and grandchildren so that they can have money for whatever, to feed whatever habit or whatever else. And when you start hearing those stories, it will absolutely stun you. I think a lot of people really don't want to acknowledge what human trafficking is because it's so horrific and so close to home. But once you've seen it, you can't unsee it, and it's just a matter of what are you going to do about it at that point. You can run from it, but you'll never forget it.
So we got some strong laws passed, enacted 2-3 years ago. I know the Speaker was a big driver of that. Is there anything else that we need to do along those lines, or anything else for your industry that you're looking at?
Well, you're right. The Speaker really did a great job of pushing the agenda once he was exposed to it. And then you've got several other elected officials. Michael Watson is super passionate about it. Lynn Fitch is super passionate about it. Sean Tyndall, who's the commissioner of DPS, he is passionate about it. Once you get these leaders educated, they can't help but to want to get engaged one way or the other. And all of those people I just mentioned have created pathways to help us do what we're doing and help other people doing.
Okay.
You just have to find that place. I mean, even as small as we've worked with a group called Centers for Violence Prevention. Sandy Middleton runs that group. And Sandy pulls together a bunch of people that serve those people who have been rescued from it and helps them in the next phase of life. But she also works with law enforcement agencies to pull them together to kind of create these think tanks to, number one, discuss what's going on, and number two, what are you seeing from these survivors and what can we do to help? And it's as simple as we just provide them a place to meet and feed them sandwiches when they come once a month. Just anything you can do to help these different organizations in any way possible. I just challenge people to find their place and do it.
Yeah, it's incredible, and it's sad that it's happening right in our midst, and we don't know. We haven't been educated. The average person has, but the truck drivers who tend to frequent the places where you could see it, and they've been trained to recognize it, and then they get involved, which is incredible. So that's making a difference in the organization, the MBAT efforts, and so forth. It's making a difference.
It is, and beyond just training the drivers, you'll find if you look at a lot of the trucks that are owned by these member companies that participate in the Truckers Against Trafficking program, they put decals on the side of their truck, so that if there is someone caught up in the sex trade, on the human trafficking, they walk by that truck, they see that number that they can call and say, help me, I'm trapped, get me out of here. So just something as simple as that again, it's just every little piece helps.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think we have an obligation as society to put an end to this and stop it. And when we see it, we got to speak up, and that's what these folks are doing, the truckers. Anything else you're working on with the legislature this year?
Most of what we're doing is just paying attention from a defensive standpoint. Fortunately, in the state of Mississippi, we're looked upon favorably, and rightly so. I mean, without trucks, there's nothing.
Sure.
It's really a more matter of you pay attention to the different pieces of legislation that are coming through to make sure there's not some unintended consequences to that legislation that nobody intended to do, and then protect the industry from that.
Yeah. Hal, appreciate you coming in, and please extend our gratitude to the truckers out there. You're so right. our country doesn't exist without them. And
Thank you.
We're grateful for their perseverance and their willingness to step in and work when so many of us were at home, certainly during the COVID era. And I just hope that the industry is doing better and can fight off these high diesel prices as well. Appreciate it, Hal. Thanks,
Thank
man.
you.
Yep.
Thank you.
We'll come right back with more here in the Element Well Studios on Middays.